Hey there everyone, Mazrock here, and welcome to my 9.1 Kyrian Arms Warrior Guide. Now, I know Night Fae has become the better simming covenant for single target and multi-target included, but it's not by much, and Arms Warrior can be very competitive in the multi-target department in Mythic Plus, and there's a lot of fun builds that you can make and have that can absolutely just put out a ton of damage, and sometimes a little bit more reliably. That we'll get to a little bit later on. But first, I stream on Twitch right now it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I'm trying to put in more dates. Just started a new job, working around that schedule, and with that job, my immune system wasn't ready for it, so there's been a whole lot of cluster going on there. It's been an absolute blast. Description down below. So now let's get over to the Arms Warrior Guide. What makes Kyrian strong? Why you should consider it. It's a lot of fun in Mythic Plus. Little story first. My Protection Warrior main is Kyrian. Spear of Bastion is so much fun. And, of course, sometimes you can't always tank. Sometimes, you go in his arms or whatever. So I developed a decent arms spec with, the right gear, some of the right gear and things like that. It's not where I want it to be personally, but I don't play it very often, but when I do play it, I like to have lots of fun. Now, one of the things that makes the Kyrian Arms Warrior a lot of fun is it essentially becomes a 45-second and a minute-and-a-half spec where you can really do a lot of your damage. Now, number one thing to make this happen is you need the right legendary. You need the Elysian Might legendary, and what that does is it increases the duration of Spear of Bastion to 8 seconds instead of 4, and while you are inside that Spear of Bastion, you gain 25% increased critical damage. Now this is the first basis of it, and the next portion is you need the Mechanico Soulbind tree fully unlocked. You need that last little bit, which is pretty easy to get. Elysian Might, you get a Renown 48, so you're going to get that Mechanico's tree unlocked not too far after. But what that does in Mythic Plus is whenever you hit a target with your Spear of Bastion, it reduces the cooldown of it by 4 seconds, up to a maximum of 20 seconds. This becomes a 40-second cooldown. 40-second, great, but what happens there is it lines up with Warbreaker at that 45-second mark. So really you only have to hold it for 5 seconds, which isn't that big of a deal. So every minute and a half you have access to 4 abilities, which means almost every single pull. You have access to Warbreaker, Blade Storm, Spear of Bastion, and Avatar. And this is the combination that can just destroy. So for rotation opening up on a pack, you rush in, hit Avatar, hit Warbreaker, you immediately have 50% damage increase. Spear of Bastion, another 25% critical damage increase, and everything's stuck there because nothing can leave that Spear of Bastion. And then you Blade Storm, and damage goes. It's not the highest peaking damage in the world, although I think with the uncapping of the Blade Storm AoE, it's going to get better. I think this build is going to get much better in 9.1.5 when they uncap the Blade Storm AoE. But right now, it still deals a lot of damage. But it deals a lot of damage consistently. And then every 45 seconds, Spear of Bastion lines up with Warbreaker again. So Warbreaker, Spear of Bastion, you are making use of that legendary every 45 seconds. Solidly, might I add. Because the Dreadnought talent allows your Overpower to just basically hit like 5 targets. So it works really, really well in tandem. You use Sweeping Strikes. You're constantly dealing high damage. You might not be Fire Mage type peaking where you're going up to like 80k, but outside of those little cooldowns, you're not dealing as much or things like that. But you are consistently dealing high damage. My first time going in his arms, not gonna lie, when you first try a spec, you gotta get that muscle memory, you gotta learn it. 5.7k damage overall at the end of the dungeon. It's like, okay, cool. Next one going in, 6.1. I'm learning it a little bit more. Next one going in, 6.7, going up. And it's really not a difficult spec to learn because it's not haste-centric. Where Fury is, try and cram as many globals as you can in a pull. Just go, 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 go. Arms is a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical. It's all about bigger crits. So between globals, you have the time to think. You have the time to be like, okay, this is my next move. Okay, cool. Just slow it down. And you know what? It's going to work out for the better for you. So if you're not a fan of the Fury playstyle, which I personally am, I like Fury. It's a lot of fun. You know, it's very fast-paced. It's go, go, go. Arms can slow things a little bit more down and just really savor those big crits. So that is the main portion of the build. Notable, and even at that wasn't with right trinkets or anything too when I was doing that earlier. So really, if you're setting this up, now right now I only have 22% crit. I want that to be more towards 30. That's where I want it to be, but at the same time, my gear is focused way more around my protection spec than it is my arm spec, but it's not stopping me from going in there and doing big damage. A little side note, Spear of Bastion is not the best ability to be using on Sanguine weeks later in the pulls. Basically, you have right when you start, and then you're not using Spear of Bastion again if the pull lasts a little bit longer than 45 seconds, because you do not want to spear things into Sanguine that they cannot get CC'd or moved out to, you know, stop healing themselves up. This is something that all Kyrian warriors need to know. It does not matter if it's Fury or Protection as well. Just a little side note. And another thing with warriors, we don't have Tricks of the Trade, we don't have Misdirect. You're going to have to wait a few globals before you pop off. With this spec, it is very easy to just rip threat from your tank instantaneously if they haven't had the time to set up. My rule of thumb has been 3 to 4 globals. So what I'll do is I'll see the tank go in, I'll wait 1 or 2, charge in, get an overpower in, build up just a little bit of rage, kind of get things going, and then once I see the pack is done, pop off. Avatar, Warbreaker, Spear, Bladestorm, and just kind of sit back for a couple seconds and just watch your numbers fly up. But you can rip threat, so do be careful of that. This has been a Fury problem since the start of the expansion. This has been an Arms problem of big bursty classes, and unfortunately we just don't have Mirror Image or Misdirect or anything like that to help deal with that problem. So, Arms, Warrior, Talents, let's go. Talents. Now, opening up here, this is the build that I like to personally use, but you can move things around a little bit. You have a little bit of leeway depending on your playstyle. When it comes to talents, there's just a few key pieces that you absolutely need to know. Skull Splitter, really, really good. You can go with Sudden Death, although this is a really, really good filler that's going to generate rage for you, especially when you're in that 45-second portion of your cooldown. You're going to get a little bit more rage for mortal strikes, slams, and things like that, and as well as Ignore Pains. We're going to talk about Kotex's video in a bit after this, and how Ignore Pain can actually improve your DPS. It's weird, I know. We'll talk about it. I'll send the link down there. Stormbolt, a 30-second cooldown, 4-second stun, at range, mind you. Invaluable, great to have. And it's probably one of the better ones on this. Charge is useful, but not as useful as Stormbolt when it comes to being a DPS armed warrior. Massacre. Look, you can go with Whirlwind, although I don't use it that much. I'm not going to lie. It's really not on my bars very much. Sweeping Strikes, things like that, or single target focus is kind of how I'm going. Big AoE is set up by Warbreaker Spear. And then either Bladestorm or Sweeping Strikes. So I prefer Massacre. Just gives you more executes. Bounding Stride. You can go Defensive Stance if you want to kind of, you know, help out your party member or things like that you can work with. There are times to use this as well, and there are creative uses for it as well. Bounding Stride I find is more of my go-to because I don't have charge. So this just gives me a little bit more movement while still being able to gain access to my stun. Warbreaker. Now this is a big part of this. Absolute must. Smash the ground, shatter the armor of all enemies within 8 yards, dealing X amount of damage. That's not the important part, but increasing damage you deal to them by 30% for 10 seconds. So this replaces Colossus Smash, gives you a nice big damage bonus. Avatar, transform into a Colossus for 20 seconds, causing you to deal 20% increased damage and removing all roots and snares. Again, you're just stacking all of this good stuff. And then lastly, Dreadnought Overpower has 2 charges and causes a seismic wave, dealing X amount of damage to 5 enemies within a 10-yard line. Now, this is your main AoE outside of, you know, everything else. So this is kind of your main spammer. You use it when you can. It's very, very good. Rating becomes a little bit of a different story. Here, you probably want more sudden death, rend, anger management, although charge. There's a little bit of a differences with raid, but this is more the M+ build for things like that. So this is the talent setup that I have been running. These last 3 are the most important. These are absolutely the most important to get set up, because this is going to allow you to deal lots of AoE damage without trying as hard or having as much setup as some other classes. It's just kind of go. It happens naturally with your rotation. Again, this isn't you popping off for stupid amounts of damage, but you're always consistently high. Every minute and a half, I was pulling 20 to 30k in a pack, sustained down to about 15 by the pack was done. And every 45 seconds, I was dealing... I was peaking around 10, coming down, and that's where you get your averages when you're peaking and things like that. So it's really, really high. It's really, really good depending on the pack size and things like that. And that, again, depends with arms work, because currently we're capped. We're not going to be capped with Bladestorm and things like that later on. We're in 9.1.5. We'll cover that a little bit more. Soulbinds. Now, this is very, very important. You have 2 options here when it comes to how you want to build your Mechanicos. There are some things to keep in mind. Crash the Ramparts. Overpower deals more damage. This... all around fantastic. Spear of Bastions, instant damage and rage generation is increased by 55%. Absolutely, this is what you need. When it comes down to finesse and things like that, so you want Stalwart Guardians, you want your Inspiring Presence. This is where you can work. I've worked both of them pretty well. Now, I did not have Last Stand here. I would just choose like a different like Condensed Animosphere or perhaps Brutal Vitality, which is actually a really, really good option given how Ignore Pain can increase your DPS. I'll get to that in a little bit. But having Mortal Strike can offset the 15% haste that you would gain at the beginning of a pack, which the haste isn't as important with a lot of your setup. It is good. It's nice to have. Lets you set up a little bit quicker, although it's not necessarily in the absolutely needed, where if you're working with a Mortal Strike, sweeping strikes on your every 45 seconds, or even at that, you are costing a lot of Mortal Strikes outside of your burst windows. If this procs a lot in a dungeon, it's absolutely worth it. If you're unlucky and you get more of the 80% not procs, your haste would have been a better overall option. This is a gamble, can pay off big. This is more just better for sustain. But Crash the Ramparts and Piercing Verdict are the 2 that you absolutely want, and then Mortal Combo is your kind of third gamble choice if you want. But this is that last part, the Effusive Anima Emitter. This is what you need unlocked with Mechanicos. Now, quickly, I'm going to touch on Kotex's video. I think that's how you pronounce his name. If not, I'm so entirely sorry, Kotex. But that's how it works sometimes. So he did the math on whether or not Ignore Pain can actually be a DPS increase for arms warriors, and in multi-target scenarios it absolutely can. So what happens is with arms warrior, the more rage that you spend gives you more of a chance to proc your overpower to reset its cooldown. This is insanely solid with the AoE build. Single target, it loses out, you want to cast Slam, but you have a 12-second cooldown with Ignore Pain. So number one, you're using a defensive a little bit more option, but it's 40 rage instead of Slam being 20 rage. So this has a higher percentage chance to proc that Overpower reset. And over the course of an M+ dungeon, it will actually proc Overpower more than Slam, using Slam even twice in a row would. It's kind of a weird math. He discussed it all. Is it a massive amount of DPS increase? No, but it is a DPS increase. So why not do it? 12 seconds, cast Ignore Pain, help your healer out a little bit in higher rank keys, and increase your own damage. That's a win-win-win. Just do it. So I've tested out a little bit. I tested it out in a dungeon after that, and I absolutely did notice a DPS increase. I was getting way more overpower. I can't say way more overpower procs, but I was noticing more overpower procs. So that is my video for Kyrian Arms. I hope you guys enjoy that. If you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. If you like this type of content, please subscribe. We are a channel that's growing. I want to thank everybody for 500 subs during the job change and the sick that I've been going through for the last week. We hit 500. Massive thank you to everybody. There is a Discord community down below that has been growing. If you're into tanking, if you're into just Mythic Plus, things like that, and you're looking for a nice, kind community to come and, just ask questions and, thrive in and just generally be in a positive atmosphere, check that down below. Aside from that, I hope you guys are enjoying Shadowlands as much as I am. 9.1.5 is coming. It's just around the corner. Legion Mage Tower. I have a video to make on that as well. We're going to be covering a lot of that coming up, and kind of what specs that you probably want to have set up to get that flying tome mount if you're into that sort of thing. So check that down. Check that when it comes out. I hope you guys are having a good time. Thank you very much for listening.